This is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. I welcome everyone that's here with us. We'll call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum of the trustees present this evening. I'm going to ask Mr. Flores to lead us in the pledges of allegiance and Mr. Rector to lead us in the invocation. Everyone, please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag, pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we come before you tonight, we thank you for keeping us. We thank you for protecting us against this pandemic. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. We come praying for our staff and our students as we prepare for this year. We ask your blessings upon them because of all the changes that have to be made. We know you will make a way for them to be successful for this year. And we ask this in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, for his sake we do pray. Amen.
Thank you, David and Filipino. Agenda item number 2 is to swear in the newly appointed board member, Mr. Alvarado. This has been a long process for us as we try to fill our seats, and tonight we will be back at a full team. So with that said, I'll turn this over to Ms. Hansberg. Mr. Alvarado, please come forward.
Yes, I was going to say, if you want to read it, just read it. If you don't have to repeat after me.
I, George Alvarado Jr., do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of School Board Trustee in the Aransas Pass Independent School District of the State of Texas. I will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
That was great.
No, you don't have.
Oh, okay.
I got to work, you get
I want to congratulate Orgy. We've all had the opportunity, I think, sitting here to watch him become a young man. And he's always conducted himself in a very professional manner, one with high integrity and character. And we're very glad to have him as part of our team, so welcome. Anything we can do to help you for him. That's correct. And I was mama's daughter.
Oh, yeah. You'll never grow up.
Agenda item number 3 is public testimony.
There's none.
Let the record reflect that we don't have anyone that signed up for public testimony. Agenda item 4 are the superintendent reports. Ms. Cook will be giving us a report on return to learn. The first reading of policy update 115. Plan for fans to attend district UIO athletic activities. And an update or a report on student and employee handbooks and grade pay policy. Excuse me. Ms. Cook.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you here this evening. I'm going to begin first with our projected enrollment numbers. We have had our online, none of this is going to be in your packet, so these are just hot off the press pieces of information at this point. So we are looking at, after we started middle of July for our open enrollment for online registration, and then we went into our one-stop registration, which we had last week. And so based off of those numbers at this point, we're still 2 weeks out from the first day of school, which is August 24th. What we're looking at right now, we've had, as of today, 111 new students enrolled. So I wanted to start with that. That was quite exciting information. So, and some of these students are having to transfer in right now because their homes are finished being built. So that's a good sign. Some of that we've been waiting on for students to start coming in with these new businesses and building homes in the area, whether it's the Hogan Homes or wherever. That 111 at the very onset, that's a really good sign. We've only had, right now we have no official withdrawals because we haven't had any of the T-Rex requests coming in, but just a preliminary talking to people, we're looking at about 40 so far. So the enrollment, the withdrawals, some of these have been some, Kiewit, some of the employees there lost their jobs and moved back to the Valley. And then we had, most of them, just about every one of them are moving out of the area completely, and usually due to jobs. But then on the flip side, we have others moving into the area because of other jobs that are opening up. So hopefully as we get through, hope soon with COVID, we can really see that uptick continue at a much faster rate. So that was very exciting. So our total online registration enrollment as of last Friday was 1,416 students, and we have 246 of our students that were here last year that haven't even started their registration forms. So our registrars are calling all of them and saying there's been some misunderstanding by some, thinking because they were going to be online they didn't have to register, so we're clearing that up. Some are still in kind of a holding pattern, trying to maneuver through and think about what they want to do. So we're having to explain to them that if you do not enroll in a school district, then you're subject to the compulsory attendance laws. So we're having to kind of explain that. So this year we're hitting some things we've never experienced before because some are kind of they're just uncertain of what to do. So we're trying to slowly guide them through that, and I appreciate our registrars actually calling each of these families individually. So now that we're doing that over the next 2 weeks, I think we'll see an increase with that. Our enrollment with our pre-K is down. We only have 34 pre-K students as of Friday, and I believe that's 47 now. I think as of today, we had a total of 47. That's about half of our normal pre-K students. Once again, we believe that those are parents that that's not a mandatory placement, and if they have other places like childcare or things, they're keeping them out right now until they see what's going to happen with COVID. So once again, we're trying to call any of them that we know and help them understand that they can do it online. So I think it's just continuing to educate our parents and help them through this time of fear. But with that said, that still puts us with rolling over all that we had last year enrolled with no withdrawals at this point. Could be a potential of 1,634 for our first day count. And then at this point, we only have the 40 withdrawals. So it puts us at a really good place when we get to the budget piece that we'll talk to you in a little bit. We were quite pleased. It was, when we talked to you that first time during budget, our first budget workshop, we came in it very conservatively, very, very conservatively, because we didn't know how our parents are going to respond to where we are. But the numbers are looking pretty good right now. So based off of that, you'll see when we get to the budget status, we've decided to go a little bit different direction because we saw a little more hope here. On looking at each campus, and one of the big questions we wanted to know at this point, what are the percentages as far as home-based versus campus-based? Because we're trying to really plan for that and see what the thinking is. So preliminary now, and this is still with some that put in before the peak really started at the beginning, in the middle of July, so they may have changed their minds since then. But based off of what we have right now, when they can still change here in a few weeks, at Falk we have home-based 41%, campus-based 59%. And the big surprise here was at kindergarten, we had 33, we've approved 96 students at this point. So out of the 96 that have been approved, and we can see what their choice was, 33 said home-based and 60 chose campus-based. And that was a little surprising to us, actually. Exciting, surprising, and then it really, we have to really make sure we're ready for this. So that might change as we go on. but that's where, that one was surprising. At Charlie Marshall, with our 3rd through 5th grade, our average there is pretty much 50-50. 50 home-based, 50 campus-based. When we look at AC Blunt, the average for campus-based is 49%. Are wishing to have campus-based, so we're almost a 50-50 split there also. And then at the high school, very interesting, once again. And so I really want you to tell you this based off of each grade level, and you'll see quite a trend here. At 9th grade, we have 65% putting campus-based. So our freshmen coming in, when they come back, go to campus. So that's causing the high school staff and teachers to really think about how we're going to handle this as they come in and keep them safe. 10th grade, 56%. 11th grade, 49%. And 12th grade, 39%. So you kind of see a trend here. That's with about 100 of our students at the high school level that have not registered. So they're trying to find them and help them understand you have to come to school this year. So we need to get you registered. So we still have some work to do, but overall this is very promising and very interesting. We're sitting pretty much at a 50-50 split with campus-based, home-based across the district. So as our teachers plan to prepare over the next 2 weeks, they came back today. This was their first day back. We were excited to have them back. Of course, it was come back and go to your room. So we didn't have we didn't have convocation or anything like that. Trying to be very, very careful and do this the right way and a safe way so that we can keep everyone healthy. So they will be considering all this information and looking at the learning process. So with that, the page that I once again will apologize that I gave you, I will send it to you electronically so you can see it better, that has the Return to Learn Strong Start. I just want to, I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but just point out some key things. This is, as we start thinking about now, we have students registered and we're preparing to bring them back. As you know, August 24th through September 4th, we will do 100% virtual. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. But overall, this is the planning process that we're in. And as anything that I share, and anything that any of us share or talk about, we always want to say at the beginning, subject to change. Because everything that we do now, we make sure that we say that. And it's not because we want to change it, it's because the circumstance will change around us, the rules will change from TEA, state level, even the federal level, and we have to pivot to meet those needs. So based off of what we know now and what we're looking at now, these are some of the things I wanted to bring to your attention. First is our call to action. This just goes back to our call to action that we had when we went through our process last year. Just all APICD students are equipped to excel in an ever-changing tomorrow, whether receiving their instruction virtually or at home. That's a change for us, whether it's virtually or at home. APISD will provide high-quality and engaging instruction to students in both environments using blended learning instructional strategies. So this is taking what we had been moving toward last year in our processes, but going there much more quickly, and then adding the virtual part 100%. You see on the next slide considerations made in planning. I won't read all of those, but those are the different things that we've looked at from TEA guidance, CDC, district campus leadership. We considered all facets. The determination made based on considerations. Instruction will need to be more rigorous than it was in the spring. The spring hit us quickly. We didn't have a lot of turnarounds, so the instruction will be at a higher rigorous level. APISD will provide families a choice of home-based or campus-based for 2021. As far as we understand it, this is something that we will offer all year unless TEA changes that. Students will need access to devices and internet in order to do this. Strong safety protocols are to be implemented throughout the district, and instructional strategies and resources need to be adaptable to both campus-based and home-based. as we look at the choices. So those are the considerations that our teachers are working diligently on as they begin that process. The next page, next slide, attendance. We must follow Texas Education's rules on attendance must be submitted as measured by daily engagement in home-based learning activities. Engagement can include submission of an assignment or participation in a live teaching session. So the teachers will be working these 2 weeks on exactly what those types of activities will be, and we'll continue to work and understand what TEA's guidance is on how we take attendance. You see some of the requirements that TEA has put out. We still have the 75,600 minutes. That has some caveats to it, how that looks with the virtual. So we are continuing to work with TEA and understanding how all of that will work. And I will tell you, TEA is still trying to work through some of these things themselves. So that's probably, and I think it's one of those things, as soon as you decide how to do it one way, somebody asks about 3 questions, you're like, oh, we didn't think of that. And I'm sure TEA is having that, even more than we are. That we're to provide access to face-to-face instructions for students 5 days a week for pre-K through 8. Provide access to face instruction for high school students at least 40% of the week. These are some of the requirements that we had to look at as we decided how we wanted to proceed. Have a 100% virtual instruction option. That's where you get the choice. Teach all of the required TEKS-based courses, so we'll make sure that the TEKS that we need to cover by law are covered in whatever format we do. Grading policy should fall in line with pre-COVID guidelines, so all of our grading guidelines will fall back to what we had used previously, because if you remember, we did some changes in light of the circumstances in the spring, so we will revert back. And if there's any changes that need to be made that we see as we proceed, we'll bring those to you. And then choose an attendance method for virtual learning. We have synchronous, 2-way, real-time, or asynchronous, not required to be real-time. And we're looking at the asynchronous is what we're going for, so that we could still use synchronous within it, but it would not be a requirement for the attendance piece. You see some of the TEA allowances. I'm sorry, do you have any questions at this point? I'm just rolling through this, so.
So the asynchronous would allow them to watch it on their time at 11 o'clock at night, but they would still get credit for it?
We'll have, it has to be done by midnight of that night, correct?
Okay.
Right, Shelley?
Yes,
If I'm right.
that's,
It
as
has
long
to-
as there's a window,
yes.
if they don't have to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning
Right.
watching it live,
Yes.
and still get credit?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we're looking at that, especially while we're 100% virtual, because of the flexibility for parents that are working, so that if they need to have someone watching their children during the day while they work, and maybe the children do as much as they can with their child caregiver, and then when the parents come home, if they work through the other work and make sure that whatever assignment or piece that has to be done to have attendance, that's submitted before midnight. And we're also working with 100% virtual, that we will have access to tech support and learning support up until 8 p.m. each night. And so we're working with our teachers on how that will look.
And that support is directly from the teachers
Yes.
till 8 o'clock at night?
Not all teachers, no ma'am. It will be done on, that's what the teachers are going to be working together to see. We have some that come in, they may decide that we have a teacher that comes in from 12 to 8.
Okay.
Or, so we're looking at a variety of methods to do that. The principals will be working with the staff this week, these next 2 weeks, to determine what kind of support do you think will be needed, and how do we give that, while we also stay true to the fact that we need to take care of our teachers, and that they don't need to work longer hours than they should. But 100% virtual, we felt very strongly that we need to provide that support, because as I shared with the teachers, it's very important that we don't just create something on this side of the screen that's comfortable for us and we think it's great. If on the other side of the screen, if the learning's not occurring and the support's not there and the students are not being successful, then everything we did on this side is for naught. And so we have to think a little outside the box and do things a little differently, as we've done now for months, to ensure that we're meeting all needs. So we're going to walk very carefully through that, and it's quite a balancing act to ensure that we provide the support that we need for the families while we also take care of our teachers. But I do believe there's a way to do both, and so we're going to work together to make that happen. A lot of these details, we waited for the teachers to come back. We want to hear from them. What do you think? How do you think this needs to look? Because I will tell you, our teachers were fantastic, and when they brainstorm and come up with ideas, they come up with things we would have never thought of. And they know better than we do. Some of us have been out of the classroom for a while, what exactly that support needs to look like for their subject area. So we'll be doing a lot of those details as we walk through. Okay. Then the TEA allowances, the option to begin school year with remote only for up to 4 weeks, and you can extend another 4 weeks with board approval. So we're using 2 weeks of the 4 at this point, with the hope that that will be it, and that we will be able to offer choice of campus-based or home-based after September 8th, or on beginning September 8th is our hope. But we do have these options to extend if we begin to look at the landscape of what's happening right before Labor Day, and if we feel it's not safe, then we could extend another 2 weeks, and with your approval, we could extend up to a total of 6. But we really would prefer to go to the campus-based as soon as we can. But safety is our driving force for everything we're deciding right now, as should always be. Parents may choose to go from face-to-face to virtual or vice versa during the year, but we are looking at that we don't want them to make the change until the end of the grading period, just simply for continuity. So we're going to put those regulations in. And high school campuses may choose a hybrid model with board approval. We have been investigating that just simply because of the hybrid model would help, where you have you could bring in certain students Monday, Tuesday, other students Wednesday, Thursday, and they're all working virtually on Friday. Some school districts are doing that. Some recently just pivoted to go to that. That's something we considered, and we're trying to see if we can make it work without having to do that, because there's pros and cons to that. It's the real reason for it is if you have so many students that are trying to come to your campus that you cannot physically put them and space them out for safety, hybrid model is really the only other option you have. So we're continuing to watch these numbers. I will tell you, the freshman level, that is concerning, and I do know that I heard from Ms. Hale today. That was one of the biggest concerns from the high school teachers today, is the number of students. Because when that high school was built, it wasn't built for COVID-19. 6 feet apart. If you haven't been in that building in a long time, those classrooms are pretty small. And so that's something we have to continue to consider. But right now, we're trying to see if we can make it work. But I just would like to preface that to say that if we see that we can't safely get them all in there and take care of business like we need to, I may be coming back to you with a request to look at that model. Because once again, the driving force for everything is safety. How do we teach our children at a high level but keep them safe?
And you're talking that method just for high school?
Yes, only high school. Like I said, there's a lot of pros, but there's a lot of logistical issues. So we really would rather not do that unless we see there's no other way to make this happen.
Splitting them is called hybrid?
Hybrid.
Okay.
Hybrid. And I believe Plano, I think they were the one, I think it was Plano that just, there was a school up in Dallas, they were going full force one way and they just switched immediately. So I've been wanting to study what their switch was and the reasons for it. So our return to learn as of now is August 10th through the 21st. Campus leaders and teachers will be preparing. The teachers will receive training and one-on-one coaching, that coaching that we asked you for back months ago now, when we began with Engage to Learn, and we were going to coach cohorts of teachers. We found funding through our title that we basically pulled together because we didn't get to do summer school and some other things due to COVID. We just took those funds and we repurposed them. and we believe that the biggest bang for our buck was going to be to provide our teachers coaching. Because what they're trying to do right now is monumental. I mean, they are trying to basically recreate education and learn how to do things in a whole different format that you normally would do months and months over time. So we're going to provide them one-on-one coaching support throughout this school year to ensure that they have the support they need, because we've got to get it right now. We don't have time for trial and error. We've got to figure it out, because our students deserve that we give them the very best from the first day of instruction. So we're trying to provide all the training and support that we can. Then August 24th through September 4th, students begin school with online instruction or home-based. And then September 8th, our hope is campus-based instruction will begin, and they can choose to stay with home-based or revert over to campus-based. The next slides, like I said, I'm not going to read all these to you. I think I've covered a lot of the nuts and bolts, but these are just some of the instructional preparations that we're doing. Google Classroom is our learning management system and the process we'll be using. So they're this week having any training support that they need to do that. Let's see, when we start moving to home-based learning, and as we get to this, we'll have a board meeting the first, I'm thinking we have if I remember right, we have a board meeting. Yes, it would be the Monday after we've been in home-based or we've moved to campus-based. So we'll be giving you a lot more about campus-based when we get closer. You'll see here a lot about the home-based piece, though, that as we begin the learning, we talked about the support. This very small print that I can't even read goes into some of those basic provisions. Let me see if I can read some of them. Regularly scheduled instruction with your teacher, daily office hours, to meet with the teacher, weekly personal contacts for students that are not making progress, small group instruction or tutorials for students who fall behind or struggle, recorded lessons for students, social emotional support, a suggested schedule for the parents and students to follow, and then you're looking at a minimum of 180 minutes of instructional activities for elementary students and 240 daily minutes for secondary. Easily accessible contact information for assistance. That's a small print that you can't read there. So those are some of the key things that the teachers are taking under consideration as they make their preparations during the next 2 weeks. And we'll continue to tweak that to ensure that it meets the needs of all. We talked about Google and our lesson plans. On to the next. There's a slide here about special programs. It's very important that we don't forget the needs of the special education, dyslexia, ESL, GT, and 504 students. So special provisions are being made for all of those to ensure that all of those students receive whatever accommodations, modifications, higher level support, that they're receiving whatever they need to receive. I know that our special education department has been making personal phone calls to each of our special education students' families to discuss their placement and their needs. We're working to make sure counseling and health services are provided for all. This will be very important as we try to come back, because we know some of our children probably have, this has been as it has been for us as adults, for children it can even be more so. So how do we provide that support? We, of course, have already said that we're providing all school supplies for our students, our technology, our devices, Chromebooks, and then this technology support.
Did you get the Chrome? Did you get those?
I'll go ahead and, that was my next note.
Go ahead.
Well, let me say that. Let me finish this. We've got, that's kind of redundant. We've got the same thing there. And then our website will be updated with this current information, student and staff protocols, guidelines for home-based learning, parent resources. And so all of this will be made readily available. As you know, I've already had one virtual FAQ with our parents. We've tried to do videos, had it on our website. Ms. Blaze is working currently to update our website to house all of this in a very clean format, so it'll be a quick, quick click to get where they need. And we'll continue the FAQs. We'll continue to find different ways to help them have their questions answered. I have to say a great thank you to the team. Ms. Dominguez leading out, all our instructional leaders, our principals, Ms. Johnson. I mean, everybody has worked so hard to ensure that we start pulling all of this together. And, this is a simple little document. As I was looking at it and I was just reading through it, I thought, this is hours and hours and days of labor of love for our students. And we still have a long way to go. But I think we have a fantastic framework to begin with as we proceed. So any questions on this before I go into the computers?
Do you have questions?
Okay, where did I put that? Oh, here it is. All right. So we always have golden opportunities. We have another one before us. But we're going to make the best of it. I told you I dressed to fake it to make it. So our computers, thanks to you, were ordered back at the end of May. July 31st is when they were supposed to be here. And we were notified, I believe it was that day, or right there around that day, that on July 22nd, and I'm just going to read this to you, because it's just like, this is too crazy for me to make up. The U.S. Department, this was the letter we received, the U.S. Department of Commerce added 11 companies to its entity list. I think I'm saying that's right, entity list. According to the ruling, these companies were added to the list for possible human rights and labor condition violations. The entity list prevents U.S. companies such as Intel, AMD, Google, and Microsoft from selling components or technologies to the companies on the list. Further, under the Trade Enforcement Act, the U.S. Customs could block goods being imported into the U.S. that were manufactured by companies on the list. What this means to us is that Lenovo is expecting a 5 to 6 week delay in addition to the extended lead times we were already experiencing due to the unprecedented demands. So, if our ETA was 7/31, which it was, it has now been pushed to mid-September. This is not what we wanted to hear in the midst of what we're trying to do. But never fear, we have at least 560 devices that we have in the district, and we're going to scout and find every one that we can possibly find. So we're meeting in the morning to prepare a checkout plan to ensure that every family has at least one device in the home for this first 2 weeks. We're going to work on this tomorrow and get this out to parents so they know what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and what we're trying to do about it. We're not the only district that is going to be facing this, but we are one of them. The hot spots that we talked when you had the special meeting through TA, I have not received any notification as to where that is in all of this. So at this point, we're still going to remain hopeful. Some miracle will happen and ours will just show up, but we're making a contingency plan to ensure that every family has at least one device in the home for support. Jason and his crew have been working as of today to put up hot spots in the parking lots of every campus and at Compton Hall, and by the end of this week those will all be up, and he said they extend out pretty far. So we'll have those. We'll have at least one in every home. Hopefully it spreads out to be more. And together we're going to have to figure out how to work through this, because there are no other options. There's no other play. If we cancel that order and go and try to make another order, then we'll be at the end of the line instead of at the near front of the line once they're available. So I'm not happy to have to tell you that, but we're going to have to just make the best of it and ensure that we can take care of business, take care of our families, our students, and get the learning out there.
Is the 500 plus the existing inventory we already have, or are they
Yes.
Chromebooks that we received a partial shipment?
No, they've been
They
in
were
our
exempt.
district. Yes.
And has that ordinance been lifted to where they can now get the parts to that it's needed, or is that still an assumption?
I haven't heard anything about the ordinance of being lifted or not, but it's affecting all manufacturers.
What was the name of the company?
Nova. So I just want to let you know, we will be letting our parents know, and we'll work through this. So we're pivoting again, and we will figure out how to make this work.
If we look at maybe as another district, if they have excess that we can borrow, charge for them. I
There's-
know like some districts already got Chrome control students already.
Right.
And has excess there that they're not using that we can borrow or.
Well, I know that GP, they got a partial order in, but they don't have all of theirs. Ingleside, they have one-to-one at middle school and high school, but not at elementary, and we haven't heard whether they received theirs yet or not. So, I mean, I would say that would, to be honest with you, I would even hate to call and ask anybody if we could borrow your, especially since we're sending them home, because there's such a liability with that. I mean, I have to say that crossed my mind for a moment too, and then it left real quick, because I thought, oh, that's riddled with a lot of issues. And I think every campus, every district is, unless they were already a complete one-to-one from kinder up, everyone's going to be facing.
But without that, I have my own. I can download whatever app we're learning from, correct?
Right.
It doesn't just stop me if I have my own computer.
No,
Okay.
there shouldn't be any. Can you think
No.
of any
Yeah,
that's going to hinder?
No,
Yeah.
It's just those that don't have
No,
access.
I mean, there's even, things they could still do on iPhones. It's not the best way to do it, and that's not the long-term learning environment we want for our children. We want to see them each with their own laptop, their own access within the home, not having to, pull it from a distance. So what we had envisioned to create for our children, we're still pushing towards that, but due to, it's just like, you get over one hurdle and then there's something else. But as I've said many times up here, we will control what we can control, and we have no control over that. So we are going to work, and I have no doubt that our team, we will come up with the best plan. I wish I could tell you what that plan is tonight, but we're making it in the morning. So I just wanted you to know that plan is coming, and I'll shoot it out to you in an email. So moving along, website, as I said, we'll have all of this updated on it. Our videos, parent training, FAQs will be coming through this. Okay, let's see where we are now. So that basically is an overview of our enrollment, what we're trying to do for the learning portion. And as we think about bringing our teachers back for this first 2 weeks, and we have athletes that of course are already working out, and then after Labor Day, when we bring hopefully students back, a lot of consideration has to continue for the safety portion. I know that as I drove in this morning, I was excited about our staff being back, but it also made me very nervous, because I know how we are as humans, but especially teacher humans. We like to congregate, we like to hug, we like to be around each other. So I'm hopeful and prayerful that they all did what they were supposed to do, because we've got to continue to protect each other. And then as we think about bringing students back, what that will, continue to work on what that will look like. So one of the big things we have to really think about now as we start bringing everyone back is the mitigation pieces, what we do in our process to try to prevent exposure, but then if there is exposure or cases, then what that will look like to ensure that we take care of it as quickly as possible, ensure that we stop it before it becomes, goes further than it needs to. So I'm going to have Mr. Bennett come up here and give you some information on that. I wanted to share with you as the board, we're talking about today the notification piece, because we haven't really had to think about that much this summer. But as we start bringing more and more people back and think about how we notify and stay transparent, but do it in a way that it's not, before we have all the facts and we cause fear, because there's enough fear without us adding to the fear. So how do you do that? So what we're looking at for notifications based off of reading CDC, TEA, and UIL guidelines, and then talking about that we always want to take it a step up and ensure what we're doing. Of course, if there's a positive case, the guidance is, and what we would follow, is notify all on the campus or within the organization. So if it was the football team out practicing now, and it was just the football team at this point, all in that organization, all in that team would be notified of the positive case, and those in close contact must be quarantined. In close contact, there is, and you'll see that Wayne's going to go over, there is a definition of what close contact is. It's changed, twice now, in what close contact is, but there is guidance on that. So the positive case is that one on notification is very clear and clean cut. I mean, this is positive, this is where you were, this is who you're in contact with, these are the people that need to be notified, and these are who would need to be quarantined. It's when you have symptoms or potential symptoms, or you have potentially you were in close contact, because of the fear that there is, sometimes people get so scared, they're like, I think I have it, I was in close contact, I walked by them or whatever. And so it's our job now, unfortunately, new job descriptions, Mr. Bennett, along with Sally McCutcheon as our head nurse, and then working either with the campus nurses if it's students, or Pam Bennett with HR if it's staff members. They would be our health task force. So when a case arises where there is some symptoms or potential close contact, they will immediately begin an investigation to see what, if anything, needs to come of that. They will work very closely with the county health officials to receive guidance through the process. That's not always easy, I will tell you. They're kind of inundated. So. And what they will do is determine if there was a possible exposure using the CDC guidelines, as you will see in the mitigation information. If it is found to be potential contact, they will notify those who had close contact of the possible exposure and that they need to watch the symptoms, or there may be other guidelines that the health officials have given us through the investigation. So I will always, as board members, you will receive a notification via your email anytime we're doing any type of investigation and the outcome of that. Not the details of the names and all of that, but you'll have the general information so that if you hear about it, you will know. But we will not we're not required to put that out everywhere that we're investigating something. And the reason for that is not to cause alarm and fear when if you do the investigation and there was nothing found, it was just concern. And I can tell you there's been districts that they were just scared. They're like, I think I was around somebody and I think this happened, and then you went and really looked at it and you're like, no, sweetie, you're fine. That was not the case. This has to be very individualized. And so our team will be taking a lot of time going through this and being very careful with the end goal to keep everyone safe and to notify the correct people at the correct time, so as not to cause panic and fear, but to ensure that everybody is very aware and they can keep themselves safe. So with that said, Mr. Bennett is going to come up and look. I'm kind of skipping here, and I'll come back to that 115 in a little bit. That's not a big thing right now. I want to kind of keep the flow of thinking. He's going to go over the mitigation with you that you have at your place. That's the latest, hot off the presses as of today. Then he's going to look at our district UIL athletic events, how we will handle those if the sun shines on us and we get to play any events. So we're hoping that occurs. And then he will just mention to you about the handbooks. So I'm gonna ask Mr. Bennett to come up. We're trying to keep this where we don't switch back and forth too much at the mic.
It's kind of safe.
There you go, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The last here. Okay, you have a copy of the mitigation. These are, the last one we went over were some like individual protocols, real define all this. And these are the mitigation guidelines where you take all those and you kind of combine them into a more usable form. And as I go through this, stop, ask questions. I'm not going to go over every single word, of course, but as much as I can to give you the information you need, then of course you need to ask some questions. And like Ms. Cook said, all these are, this is as of the latest. We got an update TA on August the 4th, and then read CDC every day and make sure we're all on the same page. We go to page 2, the first thing is protocols for screening and isolation, which every day, the way it is now, we can have our employees self-screen. They moved to self-screening before they ever leave home. They're supposed to screen themselves. And I'm trying now, we're looking at an app where they will be able to just log on to the app and say yes or no to the questions. And it will give us that data, we'll have it collected, then they come to work. Then the way it's worded for the students is they're asking parents to screen their children before they send them and do not send any sick kids to school. And that's the screening process before they ever come. And then under the isolation, of course, it's the biggest part is this case by case, and there's when we are doing those investigations that Ms. Cook spoke about, we have to really make sure we get every single word, every single detail of what they're talking about, because one word here, one word there could make a difference in what we do. And basically with it, if it's dealing with symptoms or possible exposure, that's where you're looking at those 14 days. If it's a positive case, we have an absolute date of positive, and something we work with or the guidelines, that's when you go to the 10 days, and then the symptoms, they have to be screened before they come back. When a student has displayed symptoms of COVID-19, the school nurse, which is important, since in those being RNs, they can assess and they can really help me. You know, I'm not in any way in the medical field, so they can help with those symptoms, because even the CDC is backed off on, you know, if a kid has an upset stomach or a headache, those are symptoms. And at first, it was send them home for 14 days. Well, then they even realized you're going to be sending a lot of kids home that just have an upset stomach or a headache. So the nurses are going to help us do a better job of making sure that, if at all possible, the only kids we ask to stay home for 14 days from school are those who actually have symptoms that are COVID related. The nurses can do a better job of assessing that medically. Then it goes into these, and it goes into, if you're looking over any of those and see any questions you need to ask, they're pretty much the same for staff or students, except for the return. The students will be cleared by the campus nurse. On each campus, we'll have one person on each campus clearing them to come back. And then if it's an employee, it will be HR that'll have to call in to Pam, and she has some questions she asks them and clears them to come back.
I have a question. If we have an employee that has to isolate themselves, how many sick days does our district policy allow them?
Well, that is covered under that, what's the name of that act, the Family
CARES Act.
There's a specific act that does talk about that. And the first time that if we had to send them home for say isolation for reason. They get that first 14 days covered if they are seeking medical attention. Like if we say you need to go because you have symptoms, they have to be actively trying to get a test or go to a medical doctor to get those 14 days taken care of. Once that's been established, if they go to the doctor and the doctor says it's not COVID related, you go back to work, but then they need to come back to work. But it is the first time there's 14 days, and after that, they get into their own leave. If I need clarification, I can ask Pam to make sure that's it, to my knowledge, how it's covered. And she has all that documentation. TASB has all kinds of documentation and flow charts and things that she's got on affecting employees. On page 3 at the top, I have it in red what the CDC has defined as close contact. And close contact is an accumulation of 15 minutes. And I'm hoping that the commissioner this week has a little bit, he couldn't even specify because the question was asked, is that in a 24-hour period or is that in a 2-day period? It's during the infection stage of isolation, or if you come in contact with somebody during that time for a cumulative of 15 minutes. And in here it says starting 48 hours before they had an onset of those symptoms. And if you're within 6 feet of that person with or without a mask. Now they have, TEA has added some, if both parties have masks and we have dividers up, that you can take that in consideration whenever you're looking at close contact for students. And we are in the process of looking at different dividers for especially the high school, because they're going to be, it's going to be tight. The rest of that page goes into the different things we would do for lab confirmed cases. That's that first bullet, any employee or student themselves are lab confirmed, what we would do, who would clear them. Then it goes into those who are diagnosed with COVID-19. And then these are the criteria, these next bullets are those are basically the questions that Pam would go before we cleared them to come back, or a nurse would clear with a student before they would come back. Going 24 hours, 1 day with a fever going down without using medication. If you have an improvement in the symptoms that you had, and it's been at least 10 days since you first had the symptoms appear. And if we have trouble deciding, or they can't really tell us when symptoms first appeared, we would just use the test date to be sure we were covered for the 10 days. Then under notes, students tested positive for COVID-19, tells you what happens there. Displaying symptoms but failing to be tested, they would be counted as like a positive. And student has symptoms that could be COVID-19, and that's where the nurse comes in. Questions? Okay, page 4. It goes into a little bit of a detail in the internal contact tracing protocols, and again, that's going to consist of myself and Sally, and then the campus nurse. We'll go in and ask all the question investigations, trying to find out exactly what happened and when it happened. Then if it's an employee, that's when HR gets involved. It'd be Ms. McCutcheon, myself, and Pam. And it's just a matter of going through and asking questions, make sure we know when, what, where, and how, and making a determination after that. Down at the bottom, protocols for face coverings, ours is from 3rd grade through 12. We're going to wear them, and anybody on the school buses will have to wear them. There is some, if parents want to send their little ones to over at Falk, if they want to send them with face masks, we encourage that too. There are some cases where we might, I have it in here where we might be in the hallways. That's in there now, and like Ms. Cook said, when the teacher's back, we're going to talk about that and see if it's, because I believe Mr. Mansfield has any kind of transition in the hall for the little ones down to the bare minimum. Okay, page 5, campus visitors. If there's any other questions on the face coverings. We do have some clear plastic shields too that we're going to have to give some teachers if they need. For visitors, we are going to try to keep visiting to a minimum, especially this first part if at all possible. Every effort's going to be made to handle anything virtually or over the phone. But just in case, if a visitor does come to the campus, we have screening questions that will be out. They'll be, before they come in, the secretaries will ask them to look at those screening questions and answer yes or no to them before they ever let them in, and they have to have a mask on. And they'll come in, and right now, they would sign that they attest that they did answer the questions. And I called today, and our school check-in system that we use is in the process of adding that to there, so they would be able to screen on the computer when they come in, or attest that they screen. If anybody leaves the front area, any adult that leaves the front area, then they would get temperature taken. If they're just coming in to do their business and go, which we hope that's not very often, they would just come in and do their business and go. But if they leave the front area for any reason, the secretary's going to give them a quick temperature check. We're not going to document it anywhere, we're just going to do that so we'll know. Any questions on visitors? This is the page on protocols for disinfecting and hand sanitizing. I mean, it's just what it is. And I'm meeting with Mr. Ochoa. We've got some supplies. We've got some ideas of exactly. He's already got his custodians using the foggers, and things like that. But we're going to sit down and put down some specifics. Pam said that she's received from TASB a checklist that we're going to look at and hopefully probably have them sign off that certain things are done. But he and I have got to sit down and iron that part out. But these are some broad things we'll be doing. And of course, it keeps saying frequent disinfecting, frequent hand sanitizing, frequent hand washing, and we'll do all those things. Okay, next page, page 7. And of course, if there was an incident where there was a positive case or something in classroom, that classroom would be disinfected before anybody else was able to go back in there. Additional measures for disease mitigation. These are just some bulleted things, extra things we'll do. Of course, they'll be wiping off things as much as possible between kids going in there, if there's a conference period or something, they go in there, the custodians go in there and wipe those down. They'll be on campus all day during the day instead of coming in at night. They'll be there to take care of this cleaning. The desk and things like at the high school and middle school especially, where there's transition to different classes, they'll be wiped down between use. Multiple locations for sanitizers, tissues, and trash cans and all those things. We've had to pass every classroom locked for safety purposes. We're up against a different kind of danger now, so we're going to leave our doors open, propped open, less touches, things like that. Page 8 has I have close contact defined again, and this is the TEA where they have their part in there, but it's being exposed to an infectious secretions. You get coughed on, sneezed on, or something like that, or you're within 6 feet for a cumulative duration of 15 minutes. But this is where you can take some additional factors into your consideration. And that's if both of them have on masks, if it's properly ventilated, presence of dividers, and things like that. And these are the most up-to-date symptoms we have now that we'll be keeping an eye on down at the bottom. Questions?
I got one about restroom breaks, so you can have restrooms, kids gonna be able to go to restrooms in between. If they take like high school, if they're changing classes, the restrooms to be closed, they have to go, how are we gonna monitor that to make sure there's not a group going into bathrooms?
We are going to tape off some, and we are going to have capacities marked. We're going to tell them that we'll have capacities listed outside, and then we're going to have to do some monitoring. And it's going to take some, it'll probably be a process.
And if we take some of the, like, some schools I know taking the doors off their restrooms.
We have not done that. So we look at.
I mean, you just see the monitor.
We have some at the high school that Some of the others don't have doors to begin with, but
Yeah.
we can certainly look at it.
And are they gonna be able to leave during classes to go to the restroom or not?
We'll try to keep that to a minimum. We're even doing that in the little ones. They're gonna try to have times where they can go, because they have to monitor them, so we're gonna do our best to, hold that down as at all possible. Page 9, transportation. Of course, all bus riders will have masks, monitors, and the driver and all students on the bus have to wear a mask, but we are going to be, they're in there with guidelines. We put one to a seat unless they're in the same household, as long as they're wearing a mask. So we'll do that, and we'll load it up from back to front, and when we empty it, it'll be from front towards back, and they're going to do their best to keep them 6 foot, because we're considering when they get on the bus, of course, their hours, we'll do what we need to do, and then when they're going into the school, when they come on premises, we're going to start our protocols, because especially say at high school, when they walk outside, they're, we can't do anything about, we can try to educate them and talk to them about it, but they're still going to be 5 in a car, some of them riding together. That's what they're up against now. But once they get there, they're going to do these things, and hopefully we can talk to them and keep that down to a minimum if we can. Of course, the bottom of that, the safety of every rider must be considered. So the students that don't cooperate with us, we're going to have to look at those. That might be where we have those virtual parent meeting, or a parent may have to come in. We may have to say your child's doing this, and for the safety of everybody else, if it continues, they may be learning at home on the computer if they can't. We can't let them come up here and put everybody else at jeopardy. So we're going to. I talked to the principals a little bit about it, but we're going to have to call them up and have a meeting, and so they and their parent understand what we're up against, and safety's number one. Child nutrition, Cindy and Socorro have some things lined out. They have met with both the high school and middle school principal together, because there is things that kind of run the same, and then they met with both elementary principals to make sure that they all were on the same page and had an understanding of how these things would happen, and this is kind of a synopsis of that. When kids arrive, when students arrive, as children arrive, they'll be coming in the different ways, and every school has, just by naturally have different doors that people come in. They'll be directed to their, we'll call them holding areas, either cafeteria or classrooms. It depends on different campuses have different ways. And in the lower levels, they'll get their breakfast when they come in, and then they'll go to their holding area and eat. At the Blunt, of course, has a fairly good sized cafeteria, so they're able to handle it more than the rest. They'll eat in the cafeteria and maintain social distance. And the high school is looking like it's probably going to be the cafeteria and the older gym for a holding area. And they'll have their breakfast. We've had to do that before with Harvard. The lunches will be grab and go. They'll have a hot meal already in the trays, and the kids are going there, and we're trying to have as few touches of anything in there as we can. They'll basically get their lunch and go back to their classroom. I know at Falk they were trying to figure out a way to let a different group eat in the cafeteria just to mix it up a little bit. I don't know if they were able to work that out though. Secondary, they're going to have 3 lunches. Blunt and high school will have 3 lunches. We are getting some dividers for the high school because theirs is so small. They have 36 of those round tables, and when you put 4 around that, you're doing pretty well. And our cafeteria is usually they split it in 2, and it's roughly 250 or so kids in there at a time, and they usually do a pretty good job. But with this, if we didn't get dividers, they would have 1 to a round table and then sit 6 foot apart. So we are getting some clear dividers, so there's some semblance of some type of normal, they can at least see the person and talk with the divider there. Of we're hoping that helps out a little bit. And she still may have some spillover into the old gym to eat lunch. But we're working on that. And finally, the dismissal for the day, it's going to be as structured as we can get it, either leaving by classroom, one way in the halls. In high school, they go out and go out the different exits the best they can. They've already got it taped off, where they're keeping them on one side of the hall or the other, and they know the teacher's going to be out there shooing them off. And unless they have business, they're going to ask them to leave as expeditiously as they can, you know. But you know how that goes. But they're going to work on it, and they're going to try to get them to leave if they at all possible. And if they have to wait on a ride, there's designated places, and they'll have to stay, maintain the 6-foot difference. And that's that was a pretty quick on this. If you think of anything, have any questions?
You know, I just like, you know, we talk about restrooms, but you don't have anything about the restroom procedures. And I think you put the guidelines for the teachers to have, and you have something out so everybody can follow something, so you don't have teachers doing different things for restroom breaks. You have, if it's going to be done in class, or how they're going to work that. If you set that procedure out for them, how they're going to do restrooms and breaks during school, and set that out in some guidelines, and there's some guidance for them that they can follow, instead of each of them doing their own thing.
Yeah, I've kind of talked to the principals, but I don't have it written, but I can do that. I can put it in there.
But now, it's pretty thorough as far as, you know, starting school to end school, it's just.
Yeah, some little details. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, our next thing we want to look at is some UIL. Did y'all get, that was a copy in there, right? Yeah. We just put in there where it affects the fans. That's in the board book? That's in the board book. Coach Nossman visited with you over the long list of UIL protocols, and I wasn't going to look at those. I was just going to pick up and talk about some of the things that they have in here that we have to look at for the crowds and so on. And I think it's, yeah. So it should start with game contest and event management. As far as the teams and participants, of course, we're supposed to have a clean place for them, disinfected, ready to go. I think Coach Nelson might have touched on some of that as far as those go. Have to screen the students, everybody involved, referees, whoever, umpires, if it gets to that. Everybody that's working the game in any capacity has to be screened, self-screened. That's one. I'm on number 6 under that section. Fan and spectator areas, including bleacher stand, walkways, and other spectator areas, should be at least 6 feet from team or groups, which we're, you know, for football, that kind of takes care of itself. We do have to watch like where our visitors come in. We're supposed to keep them, you know, we got to keep people away from there. There's some little things like that we got to take care of. And I wrote down for notes that we have those metal barriers. We can use some of those to kind of guide our traffic lanes. And we're going to have to go over there and look at a lot of these things. We get them down on paper, and then you have to go over there and look and make sure it all works like you're thinking. And we're going to look at those things. Student groups not directly involved in the game or contest. Student groups like the band, cheerleaders, or drill teams, they can be at these games, but they have to stay at least 10 feet away from any fans or the athletes or anything. And for hours, and I got Ms. Hale wrote down a few things. I'll give you in a minute some specifics on some of the things that they're looking at. These are all straight from the UIL. They have to stay separated. And it goes in there a lot of detail about how to keep them separated, not mixing with members of they can't go up in the stands like cheerleaders used to go on a break after. They can't go up in the stands and do little things like that. But they've had all that stuff lined out, and that's what this section talks about. If you see something in there, there's 1 through 5 there if you see anything. Student groups are required to wear face coverings, which I should back up, everybody that comes to the gate is going to have to wear face coverings, and we have to put a screening page out front that they understand that that's our expectation, that you screen for that, those symptoms. Spectators, audiences, fans, and media, schools and our host sites should post visible signs in our messaging stating an individual who are confirmed to have, suspected to have the COVID. If you got COVID, you're not supposed to come in, and we got to put a sign up that states that. They are required to wear face coverings. Sites are encouraged to utilize remote ticketing, and I think Toastmasters was looking, and they're still, they did that for basketball and volleyball.
Everything except football.
Yeah, everything except football. We're not sure why that, but he's looking into it. Going to make a suggestion, maybe we can go to electronic tickets, because all the other sports, that's what they did. And the whole thing there is minimize the touching and having to come on campus and buy tickets at the gate and all that stuff. Of course, we've got to be at, our capacity's got to be at 50% occupancy. Again, when I'm meeting with Charlie on this, he'll give us some exact, Mr. Ochoa will give us some exact numbers on what we're looking at. I don't know if Cheryl and all the dealings, if you had any capacity, I'll ask you. We'll get our exact number, we'll post it, but we'll know, and I'm sure that'll affect the way that tickets will go out, but it's 50% capacity. And then I didn't, that would be a tough one, set reserved times to entry to avoid mass. We may have to use multiple, like 2 entrances on one side, but I don't know about setting up different times. Then on the back of that, I have about this whole thing highlighted, but I'll go through it pretty, because this really affects the fans in the stands. Groups have to maintain at least 6 feet distance from other groups at all times, including the process of admission and seating. A group is defined as no more than 10 people, including the members of the household and those persons who travel together to the facility. So at any one place in the bleachers, there shouldn't be any more than 10 people sitting together. And then the next group has to be, or the next person has to be 6 feet from them. And every other row, you have to skip every other row. We have some stickers ordered that we're going to go up there and down every 6 feet. So we'll know, we'll have to have extra ushers to make sure people, and we'll have to, hopefully they'll help us out, know what we're up against, and abide by it. We'll have people there watching. And that's what number 6, schools should not allow seating in consecutive rows. Pathways for spectators, ingress and egress should be clearly marked and unobstructed. That's where I'm thinking we're going to use those dividers to, you walk up the bleachers one way, then you'll have to walk down the other way and go back to the restroom and try to keep 2-way traffic. We're going to get over there and mark all that out. Seating handrails, we'll have to have people coming around, if every so often, probably during the game, and wipe down the handrails. Those are touched, and we got to keep the press box clean. Should try to keep them 6 foot apart when possible. Limit the access of our media. Keep the numbers down, and in post-game interviews, they're supposed to wear a mask. They do allow concession stand and food service, but you can see they have guidelines there. We've got to try to keep them separated. Any kind of utensils have to be, of course, plastic, individually wrapped, and handle the food. They have to handle the food responsibly, have food handler's license. And I don't know if we've got to the particulars on that, how the food's going to be served in the concession stands, but these are the guidelines that we'll be working from when we do. And of course, all that's to limit contact. And before each game, we have to screen all those that come in there, come into the concession stand that plan on working. And ours is usually band boosters, so all of them would have to be screened before they're allowed to come in there and work. That was, you see, if there's any questions I might, and let me, Ms. Hale gave me some things that they have discussed, and again, we're finalizing that. I think we have a little bit of time. We have a volleyball game scrimmage coming up. We're not allowing fans in that. It's going to be the teams. Right now, a lot of schools are doing that, doing these scrimmages, because it's practice. But at the football games, of course, we know stands are 50%, face covering, social distancing. We're looking into tickets. Reserve tickets only for season ticket holders. That's something that's being discussed. These aren't written in stone yet finally. These are some of the things we're looking at. Seating, every other row, we already have that. Concession stands, they're already talking about how to mark those off to keep social distancing, and condiments and plasticware individually wrapped. Restrooms, again, we will have maximum occupancy in there, and we'll have somebody kind of keeping an eye on that best we can. That's going to be an issue. And we have she has this here, all areas will need to be staffed for excessive monitoring. Band, right now, we're looking at home games only, and they will be seated in the stands, because at our stands, we can mark off 10 foot before any fans are sitting there, so they should be fine up there. The gym, for volleyball, basketball, when it gets here, the stands marked for 6 foot distancing. Then, of course, those center purple chairs are going to have their own issue. We mark them off every 2, and then 2 people come. We'll have to look at those and try to keep them 6 foot, but we'll figure it out. We'll deal with it. Again, volleyball game has a scrimmage coming up. Right now, no fans, just going to be the players. Some of the things they're talking about the gym concession is we have these 6 foot red circles. Not 6 foot red circles, they're 12 inches, but they say 6 feet and have arrows. And we stick them on the floor. We're going to put some of those, like you see at some of the stores, try to keep them in line. We're going to spread the tables out, but this is something Ms. Hale brought up, and we would have to, is would we consider letting them take the food into the gym where they are distance? Something to think about. But, you know, we have a policy in place now that we don't allow food in the gym, so we may need to look at that possibly. If we don't do that, and they come out, we'll have a bunch of people out there at the concession stand too close together. Cheerleaders, right now, they are allowed to go to the games. They have one bus. They got to work it out, and they would have to follow all the bus riding protocols, mask and seating. And I've talked to Bree today, and she's already got that stuff in order.
Sorry, question, what's the rationale for allowing one group to go and another group not to? The band's not going to be going to out-of-town games. Why would we allow another group to go?
I think it has to do with the availability of being able to put them on, how many buses it would take. And again, these are considerations right now. And some people are, and some people aren't. Some of them are having all those auxiliary groups or whatever, you know, the bands and the cheerleaders to just stay in the home games.
Right.
So that's something we need to
I think
consider.
so.
Is there any requirement to have concession stand open during the volleyball games?
No,
I mean, that may eliminate one of your problems. You don't have to deal with that problem if you don't have it open.
It just says you're allowed to.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you know, if you don't, especially in the volleyball games. Your football games, maybe you'll easier control, with that volleyball game, you got everybody in your gym, and it's kind of confounded anyhow. These, you're in the open air, and it's a little wider to spread around, and keep 6 feet apart, the distance at football games versus at the gymnasium, so.
And I can tell you that the majority of every district that I know of in our area, they're not taking their bands away. They're not taking the bands on away trips. So we've been trying to look and see what other areas are doing, trying to coordinate.
Because they're a larger entity versus the cheerleaders?
Right.
Is that the rationale?
That's
To
one
your
of the
knowledge?
major ones. They can get on one bus.
And then where they sit when they're there, and if they, you know, if there's more logistical issues.
And they would remain on the track and distance themselves from the crowd, like we talked about. We are required to have hand washing stations at the entrance where we come in. So I've already talked to Mr. Ochoa. We're looking at those Skidoo hand washing stations. We'll try to have some hand sanitizer there as well. And again, like I said, we're going to get the stickers. And I think the ones he got, we'll be able to get them. But we were worried about, we didn't want to stick them on all of our, like at our new gym or something, and have residue and stuff they couldn't get off. But I think the ones he got, he said he'd be able to get off. We'll make sure before we put them down. And when we do get these things finalized, we put it in like our, you know, taking the UIL, do like I did on the mitigation, and put together what we're going to, this is a work in, you know, it's in progress. UIL, they came out with a one today, and I can't remember what it was. It was just a change today they sent out. Oh, and it was if a student left for COVID purposes, they had to get a doctor's release before they are allowed back. That's what it was. All right. Is there anything on there I can find out an answer for you, or I can get with Coach Nosman and Ms. Hale, and we can.
But there's this consideration, you know, during the home game, usually after the game's over, the cheerleaders go out on the field, they're not gonna be able not to do that.
No,
You're not allowed to do that, right?
yeah,
So,
I gotta stay
as
separate.
long as they're aware that they're not gonna be able to do that, if you can cheer at the sidelines, they take one of the field.
Right. Yeah, all the different entities have to stay separate.
Any other questions from the board?
Number 2 says spectators on its band have either required to wear face coverings as prescribed. Are we gonna turn people away that don't have face coverings?
Well, I mean, we're in the governor's order to wear face coverings, so we're gonna turn visitors away if they don't have it before they come into school. You know, it's for the safety of our students and other spectators, so right now, I would say yes. Any questions? Okay, the last thing that Ms. Cook wanted me to talk about real quick was the handbooks. So we go ahead and, we have all our handbooks. I think Blaze has them all where you can go to them online. There's a link to them, each one of them. All these handbooks, you know, TASB sends us any wording change, if there's been any laws that tweak some of the wording to it, that every year we take and that's your handbook, and then you put your specific district guidelines in there, and that's what I did with these handbooks. And that's really the only changes to the handbooks. Employee handbook, Bertha, Miss Morales, and Pam take care of that. The student handbook we have done. There's a technology handbook this year that will be added. I think that's about, and the grading guidelines, which the grading guidelines are the same. There haven't been any major changes to that. The only one that will be coming to you later for approval is a student code of conduct. And this not being a legislative year, there were no changes to that. It's the same one that you approved last year. Everything's the same except the date. Next year when they have session, they'll put some laws out there, they'll make some changes, and then we'll be able to tell you what those are.
So did you say you are bringing that to us?
The student code of conduct is,
It's, I thought it was in there.
Okay,
is it?
Is it?
Yeah.
It's an action item.
Yeah, it's an action item, which that's the only one we have to bring for board approval every year. To you.
Any other questions?
I had a question on the student handbook that you sent out. That on page 40 of that handbook, it says that we're going to offer law as one of the, you know, we had all the list of the CTE courses there. It had law. We're still going to offer that? It's in our handbook.
Well, we have a few students that we're trying to,
It's going to be
go
offered
ahead and
somewhere else.
speak to that, Wayne, since I've.
Well, it's just, if some were in it, they have the opportunity to finish up. Once they started, so they would have that opportunity to finish the course. And once they're done, we can put in there, in the course catalog, when they put it out again, they would say, as of this year, you know,
Yes.
that would be.
In addition, the NGRTC program is not considered a CTE, or is it considered something else?
It's not a CT program.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Bennett?
And the employee handbook, I got a couple of them. The employee handbook on table of contents, on the employee handbook, it's all messed up on table of contents. It's out of sync somehow, it's just formatted when I got it.
Okay. It does that to us sometimes. I'll fix it.
And let's see, on the employee handbook, on page 71 of it, it talks about possession of handguns on campus. Do we need to change that out a little bit?
I guess I'll have to look at it and see what
Yeah,
that word
it
is.
says that you can't possess or have a handgun on campus. Any employee or nobody can have them. So we need to look at that.
Yeah.
Will you report back to us on that, Ms. Ruth?
Any questions?
And on the grading policy, are we still gonna be able to do that? You know, on page 5 of it, it's got some grading policies of how many grades are supposed to take a week, and, like 2 grades a week and all that kind of stuff. Are we still gonna be able to do that virtually, or are we gonna have to change that grading policy up because of what we're doing virtually? Are we still gonna try to hold that to what they're gonna do
Yeah,
every week?
we've spoken about that, and we'll hold them to it.
Yeah.
Hold them to it.
And then, I'm sure, the drug policy, the drug testing deal that they had in there, is that included in that, what we're talking about now, is that later?
There is a request to approve a new vendor as the drug
Yeah.
testing company. The drug testing policy
Yeah.
itself is not changing.
That's something else, I'll talk about too. That's all I had on the question. I had another question, but I'll try to figure it out, and I'll send you an email on it.
Yeah, so if you've got any more questions or anything, I can get you an answer.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Next item on the agenda is agenda item 4, the financial reports. Included are the accounts payable, the budget status and investment, tax collection, and non-financial reports for July 2020. There's also mention here of Lineberger, Gogan, and Blair and Sampson going to be here tonight.
No, sorry, next month. They'll be here in September.
That's to accommodate the request that was made at our previous meeting. Does anybody have any questions on those reports, on financial reports? If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next agenda item. It's agenda item number 6. I'm sorry. 7. Give me 1 second. Ms. Cook, did you want to discuss the budget and tax rate?
Yes. First of all, I want to say, Mr. Alvarado, welcome again, and you're probably thinking, what in the world? The superintendent's reports are usually not that long with all this, but right now with all that we're trying to do, all the changes and so forth, there's a lot of information. So you will leave your head spinning right now, but welcome. So on the budget and tax rate discussion, actually Ms. Stansberry is going to come up and give the details, but I just wanted to preface this to say how much I appreciate her diligence, how she was diligent, I can't even talk, diligent with this. We left from you at the budget workshop with a trying to come at this very conservatively, but we were basing it off of very little information at the onset. Fearful of what the COVID would potentially do to us, especially in the area of enrollment. As I explained earlier, as we've looked at our numbers, they're looking a little better than we thought, and we're very hopeful. So we're basically, the paper that she's going to go over that's at your place, we actually are looking at a higher projected ADA because of this latest information, which will help us tremendously. So it's basically a projected ADA of where we ended last year, moving forward this year, with a look at that it looks like some potential growth, but we didn't want to get too carried away. So we're still conservative, but not as conservative as we were. So that's going to help as she walks you through this. She's also going to talk to you about, we work very closely and continuing to do so to look at cuts that we can make within our budget. You know, as we told you, we had what's the word, overage, yeah, maybe that is it. As we ended this year, we did well with our past budget, but we wanted to look at it and see are there any cuts? We want to make sure we don't cut too deep, that we cut out what's needed to make sure that we continue to move our district forward. But we want to be good fiscal agents of what we're given from our taxpayers. So we wanted to ensure that we really look deep there. And so we've been doing that. We're going to continue to do that between now and the time that you pass the budget. So what we wanted to bring to you tonight was a quick look at where we are today. And then also projecting out, get some information from you of what you would like us to look at as far as no steps, no raises, just steps for teachers, or a potential step with a percentage of a raise. And we took a top percent, not saying that we're suggesting this one, but just to give you kind of the worst case scenario, and then we can back down from that. Our goal has been to try to move towards a balanced budget that we bring to you August 24th. We are feeling very confident that as we continue to work with this and tweak this, that we can make that happen. So I just want to thank Ms. Stansberry for that hard work. I will tell you that as you look at this too and you consider that in my superintendent's group, the few that have answered, as you know, GP did a 5% raise. Well, none of us can keep up with that. They just have resources we do not have. And then some of the area school districts that we watch very closely, there's several of them that are looking at giving a teacher step and a 1% raise. That's their preliminary look. Of course, they haven't met with their boards and finalized that. There's always that little competition. I think the question was asked by one district to kind of see what we were doing so that probably they could do a little bit more, because we all kind of, trying to keep those teachers. But I can tell you that the landscape is looking pretty much the same for all the districts, and being very cautious because we don't know what the future holds for us, but all still trying to move forward so that we don't take a back seat to what the other districts are doing. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stansberry so she can walk you through what we're looking at, answer any of your questions. We can get some direction from you as we finalize the plans to bring back to you on the 24th. But I have to say that I'm feeling a lot better about this than I was at the budget workshop, and especially now that we were able to look and think about what we can do to really, maximize the use of what we have. She also has some great news for you and for our taxpayers as we look at our tax rate. So Ms. Stansberry.
I passed out a sheet that has the preliminary budget or projected budget that's been updated. As you know, or if you remember, the original budget was very, very conservative, and we were using our ending number that the TEA had projected for us. But as Ms. Cook said, we've gotten a lot more information after our enrollment, and we're feeling more confident that our ADA should be planned higher. And one other factor is we're understanding better the attendance. That was one reason that TEA reduced our ADA at the end of the year, because the last 6 weeks students were in school. But the accountability for this coming year is going to be more like the student was actually in class because of the teacher contact, and that's going to be more manageable. I consulted with several school districts, and they're also taking a less conservative approach. They're looking more at their actual enrollment and what their attendance rate historically is. And ours has been running, actually this year it was better. It went up to like 95%, and we've been battling that, but we did improve that this year. So with that being said, the scenario that I'm bringing to you tonight is a projected enrollment of a 1635. That's just a hair more than what we ended up with last year. Excuse me.
So before we get started, this budget is off of 1635 or 1553?
No, on 1553, that's why I made it bigger, that's the ADA. But to get the 1553 ADA, we would need at least 1635 students enrolled with a 95% attendance rate, and that's where we come up with the 1553.
Okay.
And when you plug that into my template that the state gives us to come up with our revenue, I had to update all of those numbers. And since I didn't pass what I already gave you out, you don't have it to compare with. But on the bottom of the page is what I want to direct you to. With the increase in income from the students' ADA, plus tax, there's the feature on the tax. Our tax values did go up, so we have more revenue from taxes also. After the meeting for the budget workshop, we started cutting budget because we knew we were going to have to really make some severe cuts. So when we were going through staff, when someone left, we tried not to replace them. And we did a pretty good job. We have closed a lot of positions that were left open in case we had more students move in and we needed to hire more teachers. All of that has been taken out. There is no more cushion as for salaries. If we have a lot of growth, we're going to have to readjust the budget, but we would probably do an amendment and increase our revenue to cover that. But with that being said,
students, you have more revenue, so it pays for the
Yes.
teacher. So,
the more kids we have, the more revenue we'll earn. But at the bottom, I've gotten 3 scenarios that we put together. The first line that says budget, frozen payroll, that is what the budget, estimated budget looks like with all the employees that left have been taken out, and the new employees that were hired, that adjustment's been made, and also the increase in insurance premium, that those basic adjustments have been made. And it would come out, right now, we cut so much that at this level of revenue, we would have a surplus of $174,000. And that is doing nothing, no raises whatsoever, and the steps are frozen, so no one would see any increase whatsoever.
So when you talk about the steps being frozen, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the state mandated the step increase.
The teacher pay scale is on a step,
So this is not referencing the
but the steps, yes, they would be frozen. I know we cannot go backwards, but there have been several times during the last few years where we actually had to freeze the steps, and we weren't the only ones that did that.
despite the mandate by the state,
Mhm.
freezing. So this is with the total freeze.
That's with a total freeze, which we're not recommending, but that was just one scenario that we were looking at because the deficit from the previous workshop, we were just trying to make really deep cuts. The second scenario is with step raises only, where anyone that was on a step, they would actually realize that raise, but we wouldn't have any increases to any of the pay scales. It would just be as it was last year.
Do you know what the average step, is it an average of a 1%,
On-
10% of their?
On teachers, between the steps is about a $500 annual raise. And with the hourly wage workers, it's 10 to 20 cents, but mainly it's lower than 20 cents an hour. It's very little. But
That's
even
a
doing,
local, that's a local decision,
yes,
whereas the state mandated is mandating what that step increases would be. The increase for paraprofessionals in our hourly is more of a local decision.
yes, that is all local.
So haven't we historically underpaid our paraprofessionals?
Yes, sir. That's why we really aren't wanting to go with the first two scenarios. But that would have generated approximately $161,000 surplus. But again, all of the fluff has been taken out. There's no room for emergencies. With a 2% raise, that was with including steps, and it was going to be increasing every pay scale that is not a teacher pay scale, 2%. And then the teacher pay scale and admin would be on the midpoint. That so far looks like a $38,000 deficit, but we're still in the process of cutting. Like Kara said, this still could change. It is what it is, but we're wanting your direction on how to proceed as far as pay. I really feel like we can get it down to a balanced budget with this 2%. That would be stretching it, but we would be able to find ways to try to balance the budget. If you would prefer, we are still going to run a 1% increase, since we found out that's what the area districts were, and we would see the difference of that. There's no doubt we would be able to balance the budget with a 1% increase and steps. Do you have any questions on the?
So does the budget with the 2% increase, does that assume that you're freezing the steps?
No, that's with everybody rolling up a step and then
Plus
increasing.
2%.
Yes.
And this is information only at this point.
Yes, this is only information. We just mainly wanted to kind of give you an update so you wouldn't go from the budget workshop and then all of a sudden to the end of the month and everything has changed. We kind of want to give you a little update.
Sure, what did we approve last year?
Was it a 2.5? I'm sorry, I did not review that, but I'm thinking it was
A step and a percentage, is that correct?
was it 2?
I'm gonna say 2, but then.
I think it was a 2%.
Portland had really,
We think that we're gonna have.
I'm sorry. Last year. I don't recall that. Do you know if we raised the hourly last year?
Everything was up by a small percentage.
By the percentage,
Yes.
just an hourly increase.
What we did put in the board book was the notice of public meeting to discuss the budget. And the one thing that I really wanted to point out is there's some big changes in our tax rate. Our maintenance and operation tax rate, last year, the legislature had us compress it. It dropped down from $1.04 to 97 cents. I'm sorry, the $1.04 was with our extra pennies. It was from $1 to 97 cents. And our INS rate for our debt that we pay our debt with was 19.1 cents. This year, the tax rate had to be compressed again, and it went down to 91 cents. But we're allowed to add pennies back, which brings us back up, as it's published on here, is the .9664. And then the INS rate is going down. Because the tax values have gone up for the last 2 years significantly, we're able to drop our M&O, or not M&O, our INS rate. If we'd gone with a higher rate, it would have triggered a tax election, and we want to stay away from those. With that being said, our INS rate is going to go down from 19 cents down to 14.5 cents. It's 4.5 cent decrease on the INS side. So I think our taxpayers will be pleased that we can still generate enough money to pay our bill, and then the tax rate's gone down. It's not saying that their taxes are going to be less, because their values did go up. The bottom line on our tax values, in the middle of the notice is total appraised value and taxable value. My eyes finally focused on that. Our total appraised value has actually exceeded $1 billion now. But the net taxable rate is 841 million. That's what we're going to be basing our tax values on. And then further on down, it compares last year's rate to what your average market value for a residence would be and how much of an increase or decrease in the taxes. This is the standard publication, and the reason we put it in our board book tonight is because it's going to be in the progress on Wednesday. So in case you had somebody call you and ask you what's going on, kind of give you a heads up.
And next month is when the lawyers that are collecting all the delinquent
Yes,
taxes going to talk to us about where they're at on.
I spoke with Robert Cuevas of Weinbarger, and they've been in meetings this month, planning meetings. He said that when they come, they will have a full-blown report, which will have a list of your tax sales, of who's received letters for delinquency, and all those steps that they take. They will give you all a review of what they're doing and what's
And
happening.
are we going to start getting the report out like we used to, or no?
From them,
The collection,
I'm-
what they collected every month?
we can ask them to update that.
Yeah, that was always helpful to see if they collected
Yeah, I don't
something or
think they
sold
were
a lot,
here.
or, you know, how we.
We used to
sell.
get monthly reports, but I don't know
Yeah, it
what
stopped.
happened, why that did we just take part of our routine.
Yeah, I have no idea why they disappeared.
And we find out why they haven't been reporting to us and tell them that the board expectation is at least monthly or every other month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
No, my only comment would be that, I mean, we keep talking about living in a new norm, but we're also living in an economy where we have so much construction going around us in the area with new industry coming in. With that said, there's a significant increase in the taxable values that are happening all around us with our surrounding school districts. And if we want to continue down the path that we've directed administration the last few years, is in order to draw those quality teachers, you know, we have to have a climate that I believe we're on the path where teachers want to be here. But the reality is you also have to be competitive. And if we have districts surrounding us that are doing the increases and we don't, then we're gonna lose some top talent because of the compensation. We have to remain competitive. Looking at the budget and where we're sitting at, with what they proposed, a 2% increase, we still have a deficit budget, proposed budget of $38,000. So, I mean, I'm in support of doing the 2% increase, but I hope that we can come with a balanced budget at the same time and show that show to our taxpayers that we're being diligent in managing our taxpayer money. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on the proposed increase.
No, and as I said in the last couple of meetings about the tax collection, you know, we're leaving millions of dollars on the table that are uncollected taxes. We could budget this with no problem if we were a little bit more aggressive, and that's why I'm real interested to see what they're doing to keep moving that. And that's untapped, and we need to somehow get aggressive on that. We're trying to pinch pennies, and there's a lot of people out there that just haven't come through on paying the taxes, which would balance this plus leave us really nice. So I think that's an avenue that we're kind of overlooking that we need to bring to the table and ask people to step up and do their part.
And Ms. Diasas makes a valid point. When you look at the tax collection report for July 31st, 2020, or 2020, beginning delinquent tax levy was $1.9 million. Year-to-date adjustments was $119,000. Adjusted delinquent levy on our roads, $1.8 million. And
Problem solved. If we could just collect it, so.
so she has some valid concerns there. Are there any other comments on the proposed increases?
I kind of agree with Mr. Galvin. I think we always have to try to compete with the other districts, try to keep up a little bit, otherwise we'll fall behind, lose some good teachers, and I think you all do a good job at that.
One thing to piggyback a little bit, I think we were here last month, the month before, that our fund balance is pretty strong, and we've been adding to the fund balance.
Fund balance, yes, it is. What is it, what is it now? Our fund balance is now at, I should know that off the top of my head.
It was a little over 6 million.
So we're pretty healthy in the fund balance. That would take care of $38,000 too.
That gives us our 3 months, the 3 months reserve.
Yes.
I got to concur too, but also I think with coronavirus, our teachers are doing things that they were never trained to do. And we're asking them to step outside the box and think of a lot of things that nobody ever expected that they ever face in their lifetime. And so I think we need to show them that we appreciate their efforts and what they're putting forth. So, you know, I kind of agree with the pay increase as well.
Well, thank you very much for that input. That helps us because that we need to be partners and thinking this through. And we're coming at it from one perspective and we need your perspective, so thank you.
With that said, we'll move on. Agenda item number 7 is the consent agenda. Including your board package were the minutes of the July 13th regular meeting, July 17th, July 27th, and August 3rd special board meeting. Does anybody have any corrections? I have a motion to approve the minutes of our previous meetings on Mr. Stansberry. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Diossis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. Give me 1 second, if I can, please. And item number 8 is to consider and approve the student code of conduct. Ms. Cook.
Well, as Mr. Bennett mentioned earlier, the code of conduct basically has no changes except the date and some small things like that. So, but as far as content, it's not a legislative session. We're not coming out of a legislative session, so therefore it's a pretty easy one. But by policy, we were to bring this to you each year for your approval.
Does the board have any questions? I have a motion to approve the 2020-21 student code of conduct. Do I have a motion by Mr. Stansberry, a second by Ms. Diossis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. 8B is to consider and approve a contract with Pinnacle Medical Management Corporation for student extracurricular drug testing. Ms. Cook.
I'm going to say what I hopefully I can answer your questions and not I'll ask Mr. Bennett to come up here. They sold the company we were using,
Quality control was bought out by
bought out. And basically, when he did his investigation of it, what we were receiving, we were not pleased with proceeding with them any further. So did some investigating, and this is a company that we believe that will meet our needs better. And that's about as far as if you have any more questions, then Mr. Bennett's got to come up here.
Back in the beginning, did we use Pinnacle?
That's what I was thinking.
I'm not, it's before my, I'm not sure.
I think so.
During your test.
That's quality control.
I think probably when Johnny was vice principal at the AC Blind.
Yeah, it's Pinnacle way back whenever, but then we changed over, we started doing the swab test only, to another company, and then we went back and that.
Well, after they were vetted, we felt like they were the better company. It's a comparable pricing, yes,
Yeah.
and so because we like it, if we're going to do that, it needs to be done well, and we felt like this company could do a better job.
I just had a couple questions on it, if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, on page 4, it's got the random testing selections provider, the drug and alcohol testing is going to be provided by the school district. In the past, we've allowed the company to, we seen on a roster, like a roster of the high schools, junior high kids, and they've run a computer deal, and the computer spits out the kids that are gonna do it. But the way this kind of reads, I'm reading it, that we're gonna do that for
It's
them.
the same way. It's the same way. That's what, they're doing that. We send them a list and they take it from there.
Oh, so we're gonna buy the list, but we're not gonna do the random selection.
You know,
So the way that kind of reads it, it's like they were gonna, the district's gonna have to do the random selection.
no. No, they're supposed to do all that.
Okay. And the other one is the blind specimen testing for provider. When we did the swab test originally, we put in there that we're gonna do a urine test, just to test the swab test, make sure it's accurate. And that, but it's got that, you know, that the school district's gonna, the blind specimen for testing provided, it's gonna be, the provider's gonna be the school district for quality assurance. Are we still gonna, I guess, you know, that, are we still gonna do that, or is urine test or not? Because it doesn't really say anything about urine testing here later on. It just says we have like, we're gonna pay $30, I think it's price down this number per test.
I believe the one we settled on was 8-panel test, and I
Yeah.
can tell you all that, we talked about it. And it's all urine, and we talked, and I said, well, we'd be concerned about time. She assured me that this is what they do. GP uses them. And I did talk to that principal. He was teacher there when I talked there, Mr. Edelman. So he assured me that it all went fairly smoothly, and she assured me they could get it done, but it's all
So are we just gonna be all urine tests now? It's not gonna be the swab
no
test?
swab.
Because that's gonna be a whole change in, you know. It'd be nice to see if they work it out, because that was the biggest problem before. It took forever to do the urine test. That's what it was, the swab test. But,
Right. I asked about that because I was concerned too,
Yeah, okay.
she assured
I
me.
mean, you know, and we know that the urine test is a little bit more accurate than the swab test, but, you know, and it lasts for a little bit longer, but the deal was, you're taking kids out of class for half a day to do urine, you know, to do a urine test, so.
Well, that's not well performed if they take that long. It's called a shy bladder, and you have this amount to do it, and otherwise it's considered a positive, or you have to have a medical excuse of why you can't urinate. So they feel, and if it's taking all day or half a day, then someone's not testing properly. So that's efficiency, and that's a kid trying to get around something.
Yeah.
You should see that for a grown man or whoever you're testing. So.
Well, and that's what we had before, I think it's one of the rules, they didn't get it within a certain 4-hour period that they would put the positive test.
Yeah. You can work with that aggressively with your
They're just waiting. We sent the contract to our attorneys to look over it. Everything was in place, and they're just waiting for us to your approval, and then she's ready for the list to head her way and get started.
No questions, more questions?
Anybody else have any questions? If there are no other questions, have a motion to approve the contract with Pinnacle Medical Management Corporation for student drug testing. I have a motion by Ms. Diastis and a second by Mr. Flores. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. 8C is to consider and approve a budget amendment. Included in your package was the amendment. The district's required to account for the state share of payments to TRS retirement and medical benefit plans into the district's general ledger. The actual amount accrued was under budgeted. Ms. Cook?
It's basically a bookkeeping, it's not, I mean, to say it was under budgeted, it's basically a bookkeeping. The revenue is there, it has to be transferred over to, I'm not sure I'm saying, I'm trying to do this without you having to walk across the room. So it's basically a bookkeeping piece. The money is there, so it's just making sure that everything is in its place for auditing purposes. So it's not like we didn't have the funds and we've got to now pull them from somewhere else. Did I say that right?
Yes. So these numbers haven't necessarily changed, they're just moving to the right pocket.
Basically, we're not actually paying anything or receiving any revenue. This is the state's, what they have to book, and we have to give them an estimate of what the district has incurred. And I will say, this is the main reason we're leaving the software, because it does not calculate a big piece of this. We thought we had fixed it, but we didn't fix it enough.
Are there any other questions? If there are no questions, I have a motion to approve the budget amendment.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Rector and a second by Mr. Molinak. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. Next item is agenda item number 9, discussion for topics for future meetings. I know Ms. Diosas had requested a report from our tax attorneys. We'll have that next month. Is there anything else that anybody would like to put on the agenda for next month?
I had a gentleman give me a call, and I think he wants to see if he can come address the board on, you know how we spoke about the welding shop we want to do? And he actually comes from Cuba. And he was bringing up something that really did ring a bell, and it was that deal about training, and see if that we could also set up a class like for crane operators. Because that's one of the main things that, I mean, it's really a dying deal. Years back, half my family and his family and friends and all that, we were like all running it, and now it's all people coming from outside. So our local, generation is going down, so he's kind of like wanting to push it to where we can see if we can set up some kind of program or something, and he can discuss it better. He would like to come and discuss, be able to come and discuss his idea on that part.
Okay. Can we do this? Can you visit with Ms. Cook and give her his contact information? And if you'll schedule a meeting, let's you and I meet with him, and then we'll move forward if we're going to put it on the agenda for him to visit with him. And you'll get that information to the lawyer. Is there anything else? I'll move on to agenda item number 10, which is to convene an executive session as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.001, concerning any and all purposes permitted by the Act, Section 551.074, discussing personnel. I'm just down 902. Let the record reflect that we're going to convene an executive session. Let the record reflect the time is now 9:25 and the board is reconvened in open session to act on any items requiring action. Do I have a motion to approve the resignations as presented by administration? I have a motion by Ms. Diosas. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Rector. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. It's still 9:25 and this meeting is adjourned.